you have to be teaching these principles and what they are to some degree to the next generation of whomever, scientists, lawyers, and what have you. So you understand why it's actually good and noble and beautiful. And yes, the history too, that people have done horrific things and people have done very good things. And history is more nuanced than look, colonizer, they're evil. You have to be teaching those
Right.
kinds of things. And, you know, I say it to the STEM professors is like, I do feel bad for a lot of the professors who are seeing this now, but it's also in part, why did you all just let it go that you didn't teach that to begin with? I still haven't gotten a good example. I still haven't gotten a good reason for that. Why have STEM
Mm.
professors not stood up and taught why these principles are so good?
That's right. We do a very bad job of selling reality. We really do. It's selling our principles, selling the philosophy that led to the Enlightenment. We've done an absolutely abysmal job of it, um, and I think it may have something to do with the fact that our dominant system of education in the West has been run by the government, who has a conflict of interest, always has it from its outset. And I also think it has to do with the fact that we have conflicting wants. In other words, the desire to beat back some of the vicissitudes of life, like death, illness, hunger, all those things, can, if it's not done right, um, can lead people to want to hide from reality altogether, or believe that you can prevent all instances of sickness, hunger, poverty, etc., and that the fact that you haven't done that means that you've failed and people can't deal with it, so they want to rewrite. Reality is the bad guy. I don't know, but it strikes me as a kind of mass mental illness. It takes a measure of strength, not just physical strength, but emotional strength, moral courage to look at the world and say, yep, can't control it. I can try to modify things. I can try to improve my chances. I can, uh, you know, attempt to even the odds a little bit more in certain areas. But ultimately, it's going to have its say. It's going to have its way with me. I
Yeah.
cannot stop death. And so, while we've had so many discoveries in science pursuing the ways of staying healthy, staying alive longer, and all the kind of surviving and all that, it can, if we don't have a philosophical grounding in terms of why we do that and what the limitations are, and that's where religion does come in, and especially Judeo-Christian religion of keeping your keeping your little kippah on your head. That like you end here.
There are limits to what you can do. You're
Your limits. Don't forget, you're not in charge. Now, people who are religious would say God's in charge. I respect that because I say I'm not in charge. I don't, whatever, God, nature, laws of physics, whatever, like oxidation, whatever you want to call it. I'm not the boss of this ultimately. So that humility is so, so important. And when we lose that, when we get too far gone in the sense of, like I can know things and I can study things and I can teach things, and forget that there's still limitation to that, we result in megalomania, or, we end up with megalomaniacs, narcissists, cluster B personality types, people terrified of reality, people who think they control all of it, eugenicists, theosophists. It gets a little cuckoo. It gets bad. So I do appreciate, respect. I am grateful for the sort of limiting principles that came from the Judeo-Christian tradition in this country. Very
Mm.
grateful, in fact. And I'm not in a big hurry to do away with them. So when I say I'm, agnostic or whatever in terms of this kind of stuff, that's just kind of I realize that's not like my personal thing that I deal with. But I also look at the larger picture and say, good thing we've had it though, because without it, we're, we, I don't know. You have to, and that's not to say there aren't other philosophies that could be self-limited. Look, Ayn Rand was perfectly capable of saying human beings are not, stuff's going to happen. Reality wins. A is A. Did not have a megalomania. People think she's a little weird, but she wasn't a megalomaniac. So I think you can do that without religion. I just think most people don't. I think most people
Yeah.
don't. I think most people don't think objectively and aren't going to read philosophy like that. And so it was very helpful.
Yeah.
Still very helpful.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, teaching reality is hard, but we live in reality, so we should teach why we manage reality and deal with these kinds of things. And I also this is getting in a little bit of a philosophical tangent, but I also wonder if it's capitalizing on a lack of purpose. So, like, Aristotle wrote about telos, the idea of ultimate purpose. And when writing for humans, he thought ultimate purpose was eudaimonia, which in its simplistic translation is happiness. But that's not what he meant. He meant really purpose, fulfillment, having something that you were doing in your life that's meaningful. And I do question whether or not we're basically trying to create a purpose for a younger generation because you haven't taught them at all a little bit about
well,
okay, maybe purpose is just having a family. It's a really simple thing of being a good parent.
yeah.
It could be other than the change the world mentality. But now with the education system being what it is, being telling kids, no, 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 you have to go change the world. You have to change the world. You have to be an activist. That is your purpose.
No.
What if it's
No,
not?
you
What if that
don't.
actually does make somebody very happy?
No.
Because
That's terrible to say to a child. I mean, all this focus on identity, I think it would be better to focus on purpose, but not to top down say, have one. I think I grew up with that pressure. I grew up with the pressure of like, you must be doing something important,
yeah,
have a purpose, not just, well, what if my purpose is I want to be a mom and I want to have kids? And like, why is that such a bad thing? So I don't think that we should, I think if we taught humility, we talk about teaching empathy. You can't teach empathy, you have to model it. But I think you can teach humility. Not again, not directly. I don't think you can
yeah,
direct instruct humility, but I think we should focus more on modeling it. And right now we don't have educators, teachers, researchers doing that. And that's what concerns me is that they see a lot of hubris. That's their role model, right? That's what I should be is I should think that I can and I should and I will change the world. So and what if I don't let you? And
yeah.
what if
And
I say
what if it
no?
makes you extremely unhappy because you're told to change the world because the world's awful, but things don't change?
Right.
It makes you very unfulfilled and very unhappy. You
Very
can't
much.
control everything around you, and I think we forget that.
Yep,
I mean, you can
exactly.
control what you do, and that is something very empowering if you teach that for a kid, but
Exactly. And purpose can be what that is something that is very subjective. One person's purpose is another
oh, yeah,
person's
definitely.
boredom,
Yeah.
so what? Um, there's a book called Hollowed Out, A Warning About America's Next Generation. I can highly recommend to you and your audience by Jeremy Adams. I did an interview with him about at least a year ago about the book. It's excellent. In that he talks about that the kids are hollow. They don't have that purpose. And in the past, they would derive purpose in part, I don't want to romanticize it. It wasn't always from going to church. It wasn't always from, being involved in things like that. But they certainly had other outlets where they'd actually physically go out somewhere or go do something physically or mentally of their own volition. In other words, they weren't just passively watching other people live and do stuff. And in so doing, what happens? You fall down, you get back up, trial and error. This works, that doesn't work, whether it's a friendship or, making that ramp in your driveway to make your bike go up in the air. Who knows? And those things provided purpose. Now they just sit in front of screens and they don't have any of it. And their parents are not modeling it either. So that's a problem.
You mean go touch grass.
Yeah.
We do mean that. Go touch grass. Go actually
But
live.
ideally, yeah, touch the grass, even better than touch the grass, mow the damn grass.
Yeah.
That'd be good. I had to mow the lawn when I was a kid and I didn't wanna do it, and I was cursing my dad the whole time. We had, an acre. I wasn't exactly excited about mowing the grass, especially since part of it was on a hill, and I was a little girl, and the gas mower would, like, drive me. It was hard, not to mention emptying it wasn't a mulching mower, so I had
Yeah.
to empty that thing.
Yeah.
It was heavy and so on. But I will say, after about my 3rd time doing it, and I started being like, getting more. sort of like, I can make my lines really straight. Oh, look, I can do a crisscross pattern like the professional gardeners do. Oh, check me out. I can do it faster each time. And I know that sounds trivial, but it's experiences like that that in the moment seem like drudgery. Even when you describe them later, they seem rather trivial. But I can honestly say that having that role and having that responsibility, and then standing back and looking at it and realizing that I'd accomplished that was one of the little pieces of the puzzle that gave me a sense of purpose, despite the fact that the rest of my home life was a disaster, despite the fact that I was getting bullied at school because I was. I didn't like school because I was bored out of my skull. It was really dumb and boring. So you need those things. Now, how many of our kids have some liability somewhere in their life? The school's constantly telling us they do. Adverse childhood experiences. Purpose. Telling them they're victims, telling them they have problems is not helpful.
No.
Challenging them, pushing them, making them work, holding them accountable, doing these things, getting them out of their head, distracting them from those things that you claim you believe are happening is a much better way. It certainly worked for me and most of the people that I grew up with,
Yeah.
Gen X.
No. I mean, shit happens, right? It's effectively what it is. Shit happens, so you gotta get
Yeah.
and deal with it instead of being a victim of like, "Oh my god, shit happened to me." That's the wrong thing to teach a kid. That's
Look
a
around
wrong
for
thing to
someone to
teach anybody.
blame.
Yeah.
Look around for someone. And if you can't find someone, find a whole group of someones. And if you can't find a whole group of someones, blame the country, blame the planet, blame, rich people, poor people, whatever. And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of working on critiquing, deconstructing, blaming, categorizing, labeling, othering. These are extraordinarily unhealthy
Yeah.
practices that lead to a hollowing out of the individual because after a while, what things do you want to identify with? You're sort of worried the goalpost is going to be moved tomorrow.
Yep.
And I need to disassociate from any of the bad things, like on the bad side of the virtue goalpost. And how do I score? How do I get any points? How am I not about okay? Where am I supposed to be? So you just don't do anything. You just stay still and hope you're invisible. Yeah, it's very easy to manipulate. That is exactly right. Cults have done it
Yeah.
forever. Who do they recruit? People who come in with some victim story. What do they amplify constantly? The victim story.
Did you like that video? Are you curious about the rest of the video? Because that clip came from an episode of Side Chat Saturday, and the full episode is linked in the description. As always, stay curious.